Our bedroom might look cozy and minimal now, but let's just say it was anything but that when we bought this house a year ago. In fact, true story, when our house first came on the market, the listing pictures they put up were so bad that my husband refused to see it, even though I had fallen in love at first sight and was begging him to go with me to take a look. So I may or may not have tricked him into walking by it when they just so happened to be hosting the open house, and as the saying goes, the rest is history. This bedroom was one of the spaces that caught my eye back then, and I have to say, it's now become one of my favorite spaces in our entire house because not only is it simple, minimal, and free of clutter, but it's also warm, functional, and cozy, filled with the things that we love, need, and use every day. So in today's video, I'm inviting you along for a little before and after tour of our bedroom, sharing the changes that we made, along with some tips and tools I hope that you can use to turn your own bedroom into a calm and clutter-free sanctuary as well. So grab a cup of tea, get comfy, and let's dive in. By the time we finished with the closing and we got the keys to our home had been sitting unoccupied for several months. So one of the first things we did was go into the home and open up all of the windows to let some nice fresh air into the house. After that, my husband and I sat down together in the living room in front of the sliding doors to the sun porch while our kids went about and played and explored the house, and we chatted about our dreams for the house and the kinds of renovations and things that we needed to do. We had a vision for the main bedroom to create a calm, peaceful oasis, but first we knew we needed to tackle some major and minor tweaks to that space, such as removing some musty old curtains and carpets and replacing said carpets with some nice, warm hardwood flooring. And speaking of which, I actually fell through the open air duct on our floor when they were in the process of replacing our flooring, and I had bruises up and down my left leg for weeks after that. We also knew that we wanted to swap out the ceiling fan with something a little bit more modern, but we decided to wait until after the hardwood flooring installation was done because it was going to get dusty and there was no point in tackling it before then. It felt like a breath of fresh air to get those stinky carpets and curtains out of there, but once the hardwood floors were installed, we were left behind with a lot of sawdust coating every single surface of the house, so we had to roll our sleeves up and dig into cleaning that up. Not having much experience with renovations, and especially not with hardwood floor installation, I found it so shocking just how much sawdust was everywhere in the house. However, before we tackled repainting the walls to a brighter and lighter color, we knew we needed to get the sawdust off of all of the walls to make sure the paint would adhere properly. So I went through every room and it took me multiple days, and I Swiffered the heck out of those walls, making sure to try to get off as much of the sawdust and spider webs that I could. It took us a while to figure out what kind of white we wanted to use on our walls, and what we finally settled on was a color called Chantilly Lace by Benjamin Moore. As far as replacing the ceiling fan, we actually already had a bamboo pendant light picked out before we even started the renovations. We found that woven pendant light on a trip to IKEA, but I had actually had my eye on that exact pendant light for a long time and pinned it to several of my Pinterest boards over the years, so you can't imagine how excited I was when I saw that it was on sale at IKEA. felt like a dream come true to finally see that pendant light hanging in a space that I could call my own, and my heart just sang with joy the moment I got to turn that light on and see it hanging there. However, that pendant light was only the beginning because after all, you can't sleep in a chandelier. So our next goal was to find a suitable bed, mattress, and sleep essentials for our bedroom. So between bed frames and mattresses, I feel like I must have researched hundreds of products, and what we eventually settled on was a Thuma bed frame and a mattress from a local store. And I did get a lot of sponsorship offers from mattress companies that wanted to work with me, but in the end, we decided that those mattresses weren't the right fit for our family, and we settled on supporting a local mattress store in our area. But speaking of researching, did you know that if you run a search for minimalist bed frames, that Thuma is consistently one of the top results? After reading a ton of raving reviews, I was definitely interested in checking out their bed frames, but I was a bit hesitant to buy something that I wasn't able to test in person. Luckily, when we went to hang out with one of my husband's friends, it just so happened that his teenage daughter had a Thuma in her bedroom. So we took a look at it, and not only did it impress me, but it also impressed my husband with its clever Japanese joinery for being so easy to put together and yet so sturdy. And believe me, my husband is not someone who is easily impressed. By the way, I just want you to know that this video is in no way, shape, or form sponsored by Thuma, and in fact, they don't even know I exist, although I would love to work with them someday. So Thuma, if you're seeing this, call me, I'm a huge fan. But in the meantime, I'll be sure to drop a link to our bed and any other products that I mention in this video down in the description box below in case you're interested in checking them out. Anyway, like I said, my husband was obsessed with the Japanese joinery and how smoothly it slid into place, and how the entire frame only needed a single screw to hold everything in place at the end. However, one thing I would change about our bed if I could go back would be I would get the combination wood and pillow cushion instead of just the linen pillow board that we have now. But unfortunately, that is a newer product that didn't exist when we made our purchase a year ago. So in the spirit of minimalism and sustainability, I do plan on sticking with the pillow board that we already own. As for bedding, we have 2 pillows from IKEA, a simple white cotton sheet and pillowcase set, and 2 blankets for our bed. We have a thicker linen duvet set that we use in the winter, and a lighter quilted cotton one that we use in the summer. Having the right blanket for the weather is important to us because it helps keep our energy costs lower than they would be if we were trying to run the heat or the AC more often. And I know that a lot of you have been asking me if I still have the pink flower quilt that my grandmother made me before she died, and I wanted you to know that yes, I do. In fact, that blanket was one of the first things that I packed for our move back to the USA, but after over a decade of sleeping with that quilt, my husband gently requested that we get a non-pink blanket for our bedroom here. So for now, we use that quilt for table forts, to put on the blow-up mattress when guests come to visit, and for my son's bedroom when it gets really cold in the winter. However, one thing we don't have in our bedroom are nightstands, which is one thing I think most people probably do own and have next to their beds, and I do get a lot of questions about that and the other things that we choose not to own as minimalists, so be sure that you're subscribed with all notifications turned on if you haven't already, because I'm planning to make an entire video on this topic next week. And speaking of questions, another question I get a lot on my channel is why don't we have any pictures or wall decor in our bedroom? And I have to say, one reason is that we're just really picky and we don't want to put holes in our walls to hang up anything that we're not 100% in love with. But another reason is that our bedroom is already like a work of art in and of itself, with the view that it has of the sliding doors and the sun porch right next to the foot of our bed. The sun porch was one of the reasons I fell in love with this home at first sight, and I love to sit out there with a cup of tea and a good book while some gentle music plays in the background. And it also warms my heart to see all the little rabbits, chipmunks, and squirrels running around out there. Although I will say that my youngest son Didi is very angry with the squirrels right now because they chowed down on all of his corn that he had been growing from kernels that his teacher gave him at school last year. While we're talking about the sun porch, I thought I would point out our curtains, which were one of the hardest decisions we had to make when designing our bedroom. And we even ended up getting mock ups made that showed the difference between in frame curtains, like the previous owners had had, and what the room would look like if we installed taller curtains on a wall mounted rod. And in the end, we decided we liked the look and the cost of the in-frame mounted curtains more. And as for the smaller window in our bedroom, we went with roller Roman blinds. I can't remember exactly what color we got, but I do know that we made sure to get fabric that was made from natural materials like linen and cotton, and we love the texture of the curtains and the way the light shines through while still keeping our room dark enough for a good night's rest. And to me, every morning feels almost magical when I get to wake up and open those curtains to the view that greets my eyes. Aside from our magical sun porch, we also have a lovely snake plant in a modern planter that adds a pop of color and a bit more life to our bedroom, which is especially welcome in the long, dark, cold winters that we get here in the suburbs of Chicago. And did you know that snake plants are apparently one of the easiest plants to grow and take care of? And not only that, they have the added benefit of purifying the air. Besides that snake plant, I also have a small capsule wardrobe rack that I keep next to our smaller bedroom window, which I guess isn't technically a necessity as we have plenty of space in our walk-in closet, but it sure does come in handy when I make videos about decluttering or what kinds of clothes I own as a minimalist, because our closet is a bit too cramped and dark for me to make videos in comfortably. But not only that, it's also a great place to hang our wet towels or swimsuits when we come home from the pool or lake, and I also use the bottom shelf as a pretty storage and display area for a few of my treasured sentimental photos and possessions. That brings us to the last area I wanted to share with you, which is the minimalist home office that I have set up in one corner of our bedroom. And most people might think it's not a good idea to have a desk in your bedroom, and they're not exactly wrong. In fact, this is a feng shui rule my Chinese husband quoted to me quite often when I was designing my workspace. But one of the reasons I chose to set up a home office in this corner in particular is because it has some of the best lighting in the home. However, knowing the principles of feng shui also allowed me to tweak my desk setup in a way that keeps our room feeling both productive and relaxing, such as facing my desk in what's known as the commanding position, so that I can see the bedroom entrance when I'm sitting in my desk chair, as well as using a floor rug to ground and clearly delineate my workspace from the rest of the bedroom. By the way, if you'd like me to make an entire video about feng shui and how it can help you create a simple and clutter-free home, be sure and comment with the word feng shui down in the comment section below so that I know that's a video that you'd like to see. As far as my desk, I've been wanting a standing desk for a long time, but I didn't want to get rid of the desk that I had back in Germany because it was a perfectly functional and lovely desk. However, once we moved back overseas to the USA, I left that desk behind for our renters and got myself a white framed standing desk with a wood top, and I have to say I absolutely adore it. Not only was I really impressed with how easy this desk was to build and how smooth the up and down movement is, but I also love the fact that I can stand up whenever my butt gets tired from sitting too long, and at the push of a button I can raise up my desk to do some light rocking and stretching while still being able to continue my work. Also, I'm a huge fan of goal setting, so I have a vision board set up on a metal grid on the wall right in front of my desk. And I use small gold clips to put photos, quotes, and images that I find inspiring and motivating on that board. Hanging from the board, there's also a small shelf that I use to hold the silver plaque that I got back when I hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I also like to pin any important notes or reminders that I get to the front of that shelf so that I don't forget them. When it comes to my desk, I like to keep it tidy and clutter free. Some of the things I keep include a few of my favorite books, a small black lamp that I got for free, and a small bamboo organizer that came along with the purchase of my desk, which is where I keep a few small odds and ends like extra pens and my headphones and AirPods. I'm also pretty minimalist when it comes to technology, and my daily computer is a MacBook Pro laptop, and I like this because it means not only can I use it at home, but I can also easily take my entire setup with me when I'm traveling, which I in fact recently did when we went to Florida. As far as the small black pads that you see under my elbows, I had to purchase those a while back after my arm started to go numb from poor posture while I was working, a condition which I later found out is called cubital tunnel syndrome, which is kind of like carpal tunnel syndrome but with a different nerve and pain zone. Thankfully, the pads 100% resolved that issue for me, and I've been pain and numbness free ever since. Now, you might have noticed that my desk doesn't have any drawers, so instead what I use is a small white IKEA Raskog cart with a bamboo lid, and that's where I store things like notebooks and extra camera equipment. And I found this to be so practical and convenient because not only does it look good and give me all the storage space I need, but because it has wheels, I can also move it around the house with me and even pull it over next to the bed if I ever want to use it as a temporary nightstand. On top of the Raskog, we also have an IKEA lamp that we use for ambient lighting at night, and I specifically chose this lamp because not only is it rechargeable, but it also has a magnetic handle that allows you to flip it upside down and use it like an old-fashioned lantern, which comes in handy when we go trick-or-treating, or my kids are playing in the neighborhood at night, or the power goes out in our home, which happens more than you might think, but that's a story for another day. And in the meantime, if you want to find out more about us or hear more tips and ideas on how to simplify your home and life, then be sure and go check out one of these videos that YouTube thinks that you'll like, or I'll see you next week. Until then, take care. Bye bye.